The letter came folded inside an envelope with a silver embossed logo that read, Silver Pines Homeowners Association. It looked official enough to be a property tax notice, but the contents made my hands tighten around the paper before I finished reading the first paragraph. They were demanding I remove my boat, an old aluminum skiff that had belonged to my grandfather, from my lake, not suggesting, not requesting, demanding, within 48 hours, or I'd face a $500 per day fine. They had even tacked on a warning that the HOA would arrange towing at my expense if I didn't comply. There was something almost theatrical about the audacity. I had moved to this lake for peace. Serenity, the simplicity of living beside water that had raised 3 generations of my family. And yet here was a group of board members with clipboards and a warped sense of authority trying to dictate what could float on water that didn't belong to them. What struck me more than the threat was the arrogance behind it. Silver Pines wasn't even a particularly old community, barely a decade since they broke ground on the first of their prefabricated McMansions. My grandfather's name was carved into one of the boulders along the northern ridge. The cabin he built stood firm on a foundation older than any bylaws these people had ever written. They had been using my lake year after year for their fishing derbies, wine-tasting cruises, and summer paddleboard yoga sessions, all without asking permission or acknowledging ownership. And now they were trying to tell me that my boat weathered lovingly, patched. A floating piece of my family's history was non-compliant with aesthetic standards. I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was amused. Bemused even. These people had clearly gotten too comfortable playing landlord on someone else's property. They must have assumed the lake was forgotten, that whoever held the deed wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. But I noticed, and I cared deeply. What they didn't understand yet, what they were about to learn the hard way, was that I didn't just inherit land. I inherited responsibility. And if they thought they could push me around, they hadn't read the part of the story where the quiet guy turns out to be the storm. After rereading the letter, twice, I folded it neatly, slid it under my coffee mug, and stepped outside onto the deck that overlooked the lake. The morning mist hadn't fully lifted yet, and the water was calm, unaware of the storm that was brewing on its shores. My grandfather's boat bobbed gently against the dock, the same dock I helped him repair. The summer I turned 12. That boat had hauled more bass than I could count, and more memories than I could measure. I wasn't about to let it be towed away like some unregistered junk. That afternoon, I drove into the county records office where the clerk, an older man named Hal, still remembered my grandfather's name. He helped me pull the deed, the water rights paperwork, the surveyor maps from back when the lake was first parceled. There was no ambiguity. My ownership included the lake bed itself and a buffer of land 30 feet from the high water line which neatly swallowed the picnic benches, volleyball nets, and even the community kayak rack that had mysteriously appeared on my shore years ago. The HOA didn't just lack authority. They were full-on trespassing. By the next morning, I had security cameras installed at strategic points mounted to trees aimed at the dock, the trailhead, even the bend where HOA guests liked to set up sun umbrellas. Every motion was logged, every visitor caught on tape, and the cameras weren't hidden. I wanted them seen. I wanted the message clear. This lake was watched now. Then I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Emma Caldwell. She and I had met back in college, both studying environmental science before I veered off into logistics software, and she went full bore into land use law. Now she ran her own legal practice and had made a name taking on overreaching HOAs. When I told her what was happening, she didn't even hesitate. "You're not just dealing with entitlement," she said. "You're dealing with a group that's built an entire illusion around control. And illusions don't break gently." Her words stuck with me. I didn't want conflict, but I wasn't going to be erased from land. My grandfather built with his hands. I had no intention of becoming the next quiet casualty in their long list of people too tired or too scared to fight back. Emma arrived 2 days later, her car still dusty from the highway and her briefcase already open before she made it through the door. We spread the documents out across my dining table: deeds maps, tax records, and even a faded black and white photo of my grandfather holding up a catfish bigger than a toddler. That table, once used for cleaning fish and playing cards, became a war room. Emma combed through the paperwork like a surgeon with a scalpel, cross-referencing boundary lines and access easements. It didn't take her long to confirm what we already knew. Legally, morally, historically, this was my land. The lake wasn't community property. It wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. It was private, period. What alarmed her, though, were the patterns. She noticed how HOA event flyers used phrases like "our lake" and "community shoreline" for years. She spotted how their digital records scrubbed any mention of private ownership, and how their bylaws quietly shifted language around lake management responsibilities. It wasn't a mistake. It was a campaign. While Emma worked the legal angle, I handled the cameras. The first week yielded exactly what we needed: footage of HOA members hosting yoga classes on my dock, families launching kayaks, and even one couple dragging a folding bar cart down the slope to host sunset cocktails by the lake, all on my property, all without permission. Then came the kicker. The HOA's website proudly displayed photos from a recent community fishing classic, complete with tents, music, and catered food, all positioned exactly where my eastern trail met the lake. My logo, burned into a bench I'd built myself, was visible in the background. They weren't just trespassing. They were commodifying my land.